السلام عليكم brother عبد الحكيم.
وعليكم السلام.
كيف الحال? We've come here to Wood Green today to talk to brother Abdul Hakeem and listen from him about his journey to Islam. So inshallah we'll talk to you and you'll tell us the story. Inshallah. Brother Abdul Hakeem,
Yes.
tell me how your journey to Islam began.
Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulullah. It's hard to know where to start because, I mean, over the years, I've realized that Allah had me on a journey for a long time. So, I would say I was raised, in Tottenham with my parents and my 4 brothers. And at the age of 6, my parents split up. And then me and my brother started to live with my mum alone. My dad used to come and see us every single day though. And up until now, he's still in my life. And we went through school, I went through school and I was raised as a Christian. So we were from the Church of England denomination of Christianity, where we believed in the Trinity and that Jesus is God, the Son, and that doctrine. So we went through primary school, went through secondary school, and then I think the biggest thing that happened that started me on my path towards Islam was we were in a class when I was in secondary school called religious education. And to be honest, in that class, myself and my other classmates, we didn't really pay attention to what the teacher was saying at the time. We just used to have our own discussions in the back of the class. So we was having a discussion about our beliefs and our views on different things.
So he was talking to himself and you were talking to yourself.
Exactly. Honestly, to the point where that teacher, he got to a point over the months of teaching us that we were so disrespectful, that we didn't pay attention to him, that he would almost just whisper to a few students that were listening to him, and us at the back of the class, he wouldn't pay any attention to us. So we was having a discussion, and then I don't know how exactly it came up, but it came to a point where I said, the only reason why I call myself a Christian is because I was born in a Christian family. So with that as the foundation for my belief, if I was born in any other family, like let's say a Sikh family or a Hindu family, then I would have been a Hindu or a Sikh. So I said, so that means I'm not a true Christian. So I said, I'm not a Christian anymore. I'm not a true Christian. And then I followed it up in the same discussion. I said, and that being the case, when it comes to even the idea of God, I've never researched the idea of God myself or thought about it myself. So in fact, I don't actually believe there's a God. I can't say I truly believe there's a God. I only say that there's a God because I've been taught to say it. So I announced that I'm not a Christian anymore. And then I announced that I don't even believe in God. So after that, like I said, I was about 14 years old. And then I lived for like an atheist for about, I would say, let's say 2 years. When I left secondary school, I went to college and I started to study philosophy, an A-level intensive philosophy course. And I remember the first philosopher that they started to teach us about was a philosopher called Rene Descartes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So and they started to take us through his book called The Meditations and his theory of doubt. And for those who are not aware of it, or just to remind people that basically Descartes, he came up with something called the theory of doubt, where logically he reasoned that everything around him didn't exist. He came to a point where he said he can logically reason that everything around him doesn't actually exist. And then after being able to logically reason that everything didn't exist around him, he came to a point where he said he can logically reason that he himself didn't exist. Yeah, it was crazy, but you know, that's what it was. So after reasoning that everything didn't exist around him, he wanted to start from a point where he could say he can logically prove that everything existed starting with himself. So I think he was in a cabin in some type of forest in France, going through these types of ponderings and these thoughts. And after a certain period of time, he came to the point where he said, I think, therefore I am. And that's the famous saying that I think people are aware of. And so he said basically, because he is able to think, therefore he must exist. So that became his proof of his own existence, which today I think is quite silly to a certain extent, because, you know, it's self-evident that you exist, but that's what he did. And at the time, although I didn't go to that extreme, I think it did influence me in the sense that I started to look at my values and my beliefs and started to say to myself, like, I wear a certain brand of clothing, like jeans or a jumper or trainers. And I think that brand is, the best brand around. And I said, the only reason why I believe that is because that's what I've been taught to believe. So I said, it may not actually be the case that it is actually the best brand.
So everything becomes doubtful.
Everything becomes doubtful, exactly. So I started to look at it from a sense that maybe what I believe about what is the best brand actually isn't the best brand. You know, maybe it's another brand, but I've just started to accept what I've been taught around me in the society. So I've made a decision that I said, do you know what? Everything that I've been taught is right. I'm going to doubt it and say that I no longer accept it to be the case, that what I thought is right, and what I thought is wrong. And then I'm going to have to do some research and reason about it and decide from my own mind what I believe is right and what I believe is wrong. So for a period of about 2 years, I would say, I started to look at everything around me in the society, all the things that I had been taught were right and all the things that I've been taught were wrong. And I started to question them and try to figure out what it is that I believe myself. And I was very fixed on the idea that I couldn't just adopt what I was being told. I had to decide myself. So after doing that for about 2 years, I came to a point where I realized that I do believe that there's a higher power. So I didn't...
and all of this by yourself. You were not in contact with other religious people or scholars or thinkers?
Not at all, not at all. I mean, to be honest, I was listening to a lot of rap music, you know, where a lot of ideas are being expressed in the music. But in terms of talking to like academics or reading books, there were some books that I was reading, but the initial idea, like I said, it was born when I was studying philosophy.
What brought you to Islam? I mean, what was the point, the pivotal point?
Okay, so I reached a point where let me think. The pivotal point I would say is through in the time when I was thinking about things, I would be having discussions with my friends. And one of my friends who I'd gone to secondary school with, he was born into a Muslim family, but he wasn't really educated about his religion or very much practicing. And we had separated for some period of time when we went to college, but then he came back into my life, and we were having a discussion where we was exchanging ideas about society and life. And the thing about this friend of mine, when we were together in secondary school, he was a very timid person. And if I would express my ideas, he would never challenge me. And I was always like the dominant one in a conversation who would be expressing my ideas, and he wouldn't really be somebody who would challenge my opinion or try to push his opinion.
But that didn't necessarily mean he was convinced.
Of course not, of course not. No. But even I'm saying, like, if we would be in a gathering of friends, it wouldn't just be me and him. It would be maybe a number of us in a gathering, and we would be expressing our opinions, and this friend of mine would be the least expressive. But when we were having this conversation, I remember he was very assertive and very quite dominant with putting forward his views at the time. And after having been away from him for 2 years, I found this very striking and strange. I said, like, what has got into him? What is giving him the confidence to be able to challenge me now? So at the end of the discussion, he said to me, do you know what? I've got a friend who knows about this stuff that we're talking about, and he knows more than you do. And I think you two should meet. So at the time I used to have like a camcorder, and I was getting into recording. I was trying to get into recording documentaries, and I was hoping to do music videos and various things with my camera. So I was always trying to look for interesting things to film, like if it's a discussion or whatever. So I said to him, yeah, when you're ready, call me when you're with him, and I'll come and I'll bring my camera and we have a discussion on camera. So one day he called me and he said to me, yeah, I'm with my friend now. Come and meet me in front of this park, which was next to my house. So I remember I was with my oldest brother when I received the phone call, and I said to my brother, basically, my friend has called me. I want you to come with me, and we go and meet up with my friend. And I think he's going to try to challenge me and make me look stupid. So anyway, we jumped in my car, we went to the park. And when we came to the park, there was a line, there was 5 guys standing there. One of them was my friend, and there was 4 other guys that I had never seen before. And they were kind of dressed the way I'm dressing, in a long thobe and like Islamic attire, big beards. And I got out of the car with my brother, and I was just like, what's going on? It was just such a strange scene, like 5 of them standing in a row.
Was this a gang or something?
Yeah, it was really strange. So anyway, I've walked up to them, I've shaken their hands, and I'm just looking like, what's going on here, basically? So they said, okay, let's go into the park. So we walked into the park, and then I started to set up my camera. I took out the tripod. I started to, set up the tripod and get my camera out. And then one of them said, no, I don't want it recorded. I don't want anything recorded. So I thought to myself,
what's the point?
What's the point? Yeah, this is what I've come for. So I said, okay, I've packed up my camera, put it back in the bag. I packed up the tripod, put it back in the bag. And then I turned to them and said, okay, so what's happening? So I remember the first question that the guy asked me was, what do you think about homosexuality? And I thought to myself, like, what a strange first thing to say to me. Like, why on earth are you asking me such a question? So I looked at my friend, like, why is he asking me this? I looked at my brother. Then I looked back at him and I just answered the question. I said, well, I don't practice that behavior. I don't do that type of stuff. And I don't hang around people who do. But if people do that stuff behind closed doors, then that's their business. And then he went on to respond by saying, how can you say it's nothing to do with you? Because if you have children in the future and then your child goes to a school and the child's teacher is a homosexual, then the teacher could teach your child that homosexuality is okay, and then your child could become a homosexual. And it could end up affecting you in that way. So I was like, okay. And then he asked me various other questions, but he was speaking to me in a very challenging way. So I didn't like the way he was speaking to me, because at the time I used to just have discussions with people and exchange ideas. So I came to a point where he'd asked me so many questions in such a challenging way. I said to him, do you know what? I haven't come here to proselytize anybody, but it seems clear that you have. And by that time, he had made some claims about Islam, and he said that he can prove that Islam is the truth. So I said to him, you have said that Islam is the truth and that you can prove it. So I want you to prove it, and then I'm going to go home. Because I was thinking to myself, you can't make such a big claim to me and I'm not going to take you up on it. So he said, okay, I'll do it. And I was thinking to myself, like, the guy's so confident, but I'm thinking, how on earth are you going to be able to prove that to me right now? So anyway, we went to the shop, we bought some chicken and chips, then we got into my car, and for the next 2 hours, he presented Islam to me. And the way he presented Islam to me, he was so eloquent in his speech, and his reasoning was so well organized and so reasonable. It had such an effect on me. And whilst he's speaking, other than the actual things he's saying, I was analyzing, like, what is he trying to get out of this? And I couldn't figure it out, because I'm thinking, I'm not going to end up giving him any money. He's not asking for any money, but he's taking his time out to give me this message. So by the end of the conversation, I was feeling like he's sincerely trying to educate me about something he believes that I don't know. So within the discussion, when he had mentioned the Quran, my brother who was with me said, I've got a Quran at home. And I remembered my brother saying it in the middle of the conversation. So by the end of the discussion, I said, do you know what? I have to read this book that he's talking about, because I don't believe that it can really exist. The way he's described it, a book like this can't really exist. And one of the main things that he had said...
So he was saying beautiful things
amazing
about something, and you wanted to make sure that this is true.
Yeah. I wanted to make sure that it was true, but my thing was, I can't imagine, like, how can a book like this exist? It was too, fantastical in my mind to accept that something like that existed to a certain extent. And one of the things that really struck me was that, because at the time, I've always been a creative writer. And at the time I used to write like rap music, which is effectively poetry. Yeah. Mm. And the people that used to listen to me and hear my stuff or read my stuff would always commend me and say, your writing is really amazing. Like, I was a very skilled writer from when I was very young. So I had a big, appreciation for words. So one of the lines of reasoning he gave me, which was very effective, is he said that the Quran has 3 elements in terms of the style of the book. He says it has meaning, it has structure, and it has style. And he said when it comes to poetry, the highest types of poetry can only ever have 2 elements within a single line of poetry. You can have style, and it can have a high level of style, and it can have a high level of meaning, or any 2 of the combinations. He said it's very rare for a line of poetry to have all 3. And I was listening, I was like, okay. But he said the Quran has all 3 throughout the whole of it. And in poetry, this is very rare to even be able to do in a line. So I said, okay, that's very interesting. So anyway, by the end of the conversation, I said, I have to read this book. So when I left him, I went back home with my brother. And I remember I was just pondering on what the guy had said. And I came out of the car, and I just remember I was just so overwhelmed by what he had said. But I wanted to read the Quran. So I said to my brother, you said you've got a copy of that book. Can I have it? And he was like, no, I'm reading it first. So I was very upset. I was thinking to myself, I didn't realize that he had connected with it as well, and he wanted to read it. So I was very upset that
he was interested too.
He was very interested, yeah. So he said he's going to read it. So anyway, my life went on, and various things happened. And then eventually one day he came to me, and he just gave me the translation of the Quran. He said, yeah, I'm done with it. You can have it. And I was surprised, because I was thinking to myself, growing up with the Bible is very, very, big in size. It's got a lot of words in there. And if you're going to be reading a book like that, trying to understand it, it's going to take you a lot longer than it seemed it took him. And I was expecting it to be the same type of size and depth and that. So I thought he could never have finished reading this, but I didn't really care because I finally got hold of the book. So at that point, I started to read it. And at that time, when I was reading something, I wanted to read every single word on the book, from the cover to what the publishing house says, every single word. So I started to do that. And I remember in the translator's foreword, in I think the first paragraph or the second paragraph, it said, the Quran cannot be translated. And this was the translation that was done by Muhammad Pikthaj. Yeah. So when it said the Quran cannot be translated, I couldn't understand it. And I remember the brother who had presented it to me in the park had said that the Quran is only in Arabic. So in English, you're only going to get an idea of the meanings, but it's not the actual Quran. So when I saw that by the translator, I was a bit surprised, and it intrigued me more. So anyway, I started reading it. And I used to go to the park with this book and just find, a quiet space, sit on a bench and open this book. And I was just so intent on, trying to understand this book and analyze it. It's like I used to go into a different world. Like when I started reading the book, I used to be fully absorbed into what I was reading. And the book was just so striking, like the things that it was saying. So obviously Surah Al-Baqarah is talking about the Jews and the Christians and stories of Musa alayhi salam and Dawood alayhi salam and these types of things. So those historical things, I was saying to myself, okay, maybe they happened, maybe they didn't happen. I just used to kind of go past that. And I didn't really see the benefit I was getting from hearing these stories. There's the stories to me. But then there would be the verses that give you advice for life. And when I would come across a verse that would advise you of how you can live your life, I used to effectively close the book and then think to myself, if I was to apply that, what would it result in my life? And if all of the people was to apply that, what would it do for people in their lives? And I used to always come to the conclusion that if people were to apply these advices or these rules, it would definitely improve people's lives and improve the society. And other verses I would come past, it would be like, yeah, that goes without saying. Everybody knows that. I know that. And I just found myself going throughout the Quran like this, and I was nodding with so much stuff, like saying, yes, everybody knows that, or I will be analyzing new ideas that it was presenting and understanding that it makes sense and that it will benefit people. So I reached halfway through it, back to Surah Al-Maryam. And at that point, I was actually trying to transform my life without really knowing it, just subconsciously. I was seeing that I was transforming my life to try to be in line with what the book was telling me to do in my life. And then
you were already becoming a Muslim.
This is what I kind of found out. Yeah. So at the same time, around that period of time, I was meeting up with my friend who had introduced me to this brother and two other brothers in a Lebanese cafe. And they would say to me, if you've got any questions about what you're reading, just ask us and we'll try to answer. So when I was discussing things with him, he was saying, do you know what? You're already a Muslim.
SubhanAllah.
He was saying to me, you're already a Muslim, because I was reading the book. At that point, I was saying to myself, I believe everything this book is saying so far. But I was still skeptical that by the end of the book, there was going to be some twist, like in the end of like a movie where you end up worshipping the devil or something at the end of it. So I was still skeptical. So I was thinking to myself, I need to get to the end of the book before I can say I believe in the whole book. But I was saying to myself, if the next half of the book matches the first half, then I'm fully believing this book. So when I expressed that to the brothers that I was sitting down with, they said, you're already a Muslim.
So they told you were already Muslim because of your response when you were reading the Quran. And then you just said the Shahada.
Yeah, they taught me this. I said to them, the guy said, you're already a Muslim. But in my head, I was thinking, to be a Muslim, you have to finish reading the Quran. You can't be a Muslim without finishing. So he explained to me, no, that's not the case. So I asked him anyway, for me to become a Muslim, what do I have to do? So he told me the Shahada, and he told me to repeat after him. And then I repeated after him. They said, you're a Muslim.
Were they revert Muslims or were they born Muslims?
The main guy was a revert. Yeah, the main one that I used to speak to. There was two other brothers, but the other two I think were born into Islam Muslim families. But the main person was a revert as well. Yeah.
Where did you say the Shahada? Where was that?
It was in a Lebanese cafe opposite a masjid in my area. Yeah, in Whiteman Road. Yeah, in North London.
We'll have another session with you to tell us about what happened afterwards.
Sure.
Once you embraced Islam, what happened to your life? How much a change did that make in your life? But we'll see you in the next episode.
Sure.